going to talk about some fun facts that we're seeing in the industry. And Rich and I have known each other for quite a while. We started talking about this dramatic shift that we've seen in the industry. And a lot of my clients, we've seen kind of this flip from certain revenue lines to other revenue lines. And we're going to delve into a little bit of the details on what we think is going to happen once we go back to normal. And we have some fun facts related to that. But let me tell you a little bit about Opus Consulting Group. We are a cross-functional team of management consultants. We're based out of Portland, Boston, and Portsmouth. And oftentimes we serve a role as an outsourced strategy officer. We're a trusted advisor. We help clients oftentimes in the realm of finance, but we also delve in marketing, strategic considerations, and heavily financial analysis. But Rich, tell us a little bit about yourself, and don't go too far down the road. We have some fun facts to talk about, but just introduce yourself, Rich. I've known you for a long time, but I'm sure there's more to tell.
I absolutely will. And I just want to say, I think Cameron might be on the call. So if you want to elevate him while I introduce myself. My name is Rich Brooks. I'm the president of Flyte New Media. We're a digital agency located here in Portland, Maine, which basically means that we help clients design and develop websites and then back it up with digital marketing, search engine optimization, social media, digital advertising. I'm also the founder of the Agents of Change, a weekly podcast and an annual conference that's all about search, social, and mobile marketing. And I'm also the tech guru on 207, the evening news program here in Maine on the NBC affiliates, where I do hard-hitting news stories on where the best recipe sites are online and how to take better pictures with your smartphone. And that's probably all you need to know about me right now.
Hey, Rich, thank you so much. Cameron, can you unmute yourself and just introduce yourself? So Cameron DeLeone is our other panelist. Interesting fun fact from Cameron, you just moved here. And so
that's correct.
We have a great, and we grabbed another talented individual to our state of Maine. But Cameron, just tell us a little bit about how you woke up one day and decided you're going to sell chicken online.
Yeah, right. So it's kind of an interesting story. I mean, yeah, I've always been this sort of tactile person, right? Hands-on. I ended up, finding myself in the tech industry, working on software for the last 5 years. But I really love solving those kind of abstract problems. But I think I've always had a calling to, do something a little more tactile. And it really, I mean, there's a sort of, proximate cause and the ultimate cause. I think philosophically we can leave that aside, the sort of ultimate reason that I'm here. But just sort of this winding road of working for this software company called Airtable, really kind of finding out how much I enjoyed workflow consulting and kind of building out processes for people, helping people optimize, both physical assets, moving, people and machinery and items around in the real world and kind of mapping that out in software. And then also kind of idea workflow and helping knowledge workers do the same. So I worked for this company for about 2 years actually, and really discovered that this was sort of my favorite part of the job, was kind of consulting and building these systems out for people. And lo and behold, one of my close friends and old college roommates had just built this business for about 10 years and was really kind of doing everything pen and paper. And so we realized there was a great opportunity for me to come in and kind of merge my love of the sort of tactile and real world problem solving with this kind of skill set that I have. So that's how I ended up here.
Great. Hey, and so thank you so much. So Cameron, you're going to be talking a little bit about what does it look like creating an e-content strategy overnight, right?
Yep.
But before we get started and I share some of the questions that people posted, just to get us grounded a little bit, we know that the economy currently is in crisis and a major downsweep and decline. Just to share some facts, the grocery and retail, we're down roughly 10 to 12% in the retail overall. Certain industries have seen an increase, like grocery retailing has seen a 25 to 30% spike, while hospitality and other retail industries have seen a dramatic decline. I think clothing is down 50%, for example. However, within that overall decline, there is a sweeping shift that we've seen, and the 33% of all retail sales are now through e-commerce channels. So within some certain subcategories, there's more or less, but there's been basically a doubling of e-channel sales, and we want to ask ourselves, the question that I posed myself is, this sudden spike that we've seen over April and May, will that continue on? And there was a really interesting survey done by paymentsource.com that surveyed roughly around 1,000 people, and 58% of respondents said they did not shift to online strategies. So the other 42 was then, if we dissect that group a little bit more, 23% said that they were going to stay on the new online channels that they've shifted their old behavior to. So that's there to stay, which I thought was really, really interesting. And as a consultant, look to working with small businesses as well as Rich, the big question here was that a spike, or was that a plateauing? And so, Rich, if I could turn it over to you, what are you seeing at the ground level? And how are companies changing their digital strategy post-lockdown?
So, I can't speak to the macro, but I can certainly speak to the variety of clients that we have. And we do have clients in a number of different verticals. As you mentioned, some businesses actually were benefiting from COVID while others are taking a hit. We've definitely seen that. As we work with these different industries, we're seeing that more people are taking their website seriously. I think, and their digital presence in general seriously. They're investing more time in it. They're more likely to look for e-commerce solutions. And so the companies that are going to be winning, going on now as well as in the future, when this is a distant memory, are the companies that are investing more in their online presence. And I see a number of companies looking for ways to add more functionality and tools and visibility to all their different platforms right now. And I do believe that's critical, because I feel that this has been going on long enough that people are getting trained into behaviors. Consumers are getting trained into behaviors that are going to stick around long after the pandemic. And we've talked about this before, but things like people are looking to do more of their research online. They're looking for options like curbside pickup. They're looking for delivery. They're looking for all this sort of stuff. They want to be able to do all the research before they even head out of the store. We talked about that. We're all on Zoom. Everybody, it seems, in the free world now has Zoom on their computers, and they're comfortable in using these. So again, this is going to be a change in the way that we do business. No more phone calls. It's always going to be Zoom calls. So I think that companies that are recognizing that consumer behaviors have shifted, and most, if not all those behaviors, they're not going to shift back. So you need to invest in a more robust website, in something that gives people more of the answers and allows them to have more of the customer journey online rather than face-to-face. And we're seeing that across a lot of different industries.
Great. Thank you, Rich. So Cameron, it's a unique story that you shared, how you went to start selling chicken sales online, but can you just tell us, like, when did it hit you? When were you like, hey, there's an opportunity here, and how did you initially just go about it? What was the start, and what did that journey look like?
Yeah, it's been a really fun one, so happy to elaborate. So probably back in, I don't know, November, December, Ryan, the founder of CommonWealth Poultry, and I started talking, and we started sort of planning out what kind of work that I would do to help grow the business. And I came out in January, I built some stuff, for some very operational stuff, just to help packing and help, data sort of come off of paper and onto computers. And we implemented that system, and we were kind of trying to figure out what the next thing that I was going to work on was. And then, come March, it became pretty clear that we were all going to be inside for some period of time. And I think in about, I don't know, I mean, Ryan has always been somebody who's open to new ideas and just like, this is an opportunity, we got to jump on it, right? He's not slow to make decisions. So I think we decided that we wanted to spin up a website. And I think in about 3 weeks to, it's like three and a half weeks, we had a working Shopify site. Of course, had some photography, taken. We have a really great photographer. And so, yeah, basically we just saw like, this is going to be an opportunity. People are going to be stuck in their houses. Like, it was pretty clear that some form of grocery delivery was going to win the day. And we saw this sort of both as an opportunity to, rise to the challenge to help feed people in an uncertain time, and also as a way to, kind of acclimate people to buying a fresh meat product over the internet, which is not really something that has been available, right? So most of the online sales, direct-to-consumer stuff it ships frozen, and our situation is such that we actually have the ability to ship a fresh product, which is really, I think, differentiates. And yet there's a lot of kind of concern around, how do we do that? And so there was this whole operational component of like, first we went through UPS and like they weren't reliable enough, and then we switched to FedEx. And so there was like a lot of negotiating that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, really like modern web technology, and like I have my gripes with Shopify, but like I'm so amazed at how easy they made it to stand up a website. And I'm like pretty technical, right? I can code and do all that, but like really you don't actually need to. So you can really click and sort of, plug and play with this. And so it was kind of like, we decided we were going to do it. And we, sort of over the course of a couple of weeks, we ended up hiring somebody to do a little bit more like social media stuff. And, she was crucial in kind of getting that out the door. Yeah.
So when we were preparing for the webinar, you talked a little bit about this, increased demand that basically gave you an area a sandbox to play and experiment in. How is that looking today?
Yeah. So I think we saw this kind of like this big.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the spike that we saw in the industry.
Yeah. So I think our first sales were sort of like early April, really, like first week of April, basically. And we basically just shot up overnight. And, by sort of like mid to late May, we were doing, hundreds and hundreds of orders a week. And, we really did not have to do a lot. Like we have some really sort of compelling photography, just static images that we were able to put. And like, I did all of well, we had a little bit of, sort of collaboration on the content, but most of what was getting, paid advertising. We had a fairly small, organic following at that point, and I think we've sort of been trying to grow it. But yeah, like mostly we hit Facebook advertising, and it was converting really, really well for us, sort of in that 2-month window. So it was really just static images on Facebook with like, little blips of text, kind of introducing the brand, introducing, the process of buying fresh chicken on the internet, what the deals were, free shipping, et cetera. And yeah, we were converting sort of really well from just that. Like, again, I knew nothing. I mean, I knew, I've worked for tech companies before, so I kind of, I've been around marketing people. I know the lingo, and I know kind of what are the parameters I need to set to get a Facebook ad to perform. But I, of course, have no experience doing that. So it was just kind of me learning, drawing on people in my network and just kind of testing stuff out. And like, we were getting really, really good return on spend for probably a 2-month window, supporting hundreds of orders. And then I think, with all the sort of current events, with all of the protesting, with like, the sort of tide of online advertising, I think really shifted. And it was at that point that, my kind of the sort of, and I think we'll get to this later, right? But like the extent to which we really had fleshed out our content strategy in a coherent way that really, I think, represents what we want to represent as a brand. Like, I think we hit a point where we started to hit, diminishing returns. And so we actually have seen the demand for sales, just like with whatever advertising we were doing, go down, considerably. So for us, there definitely was a spike. I think, again, like we looked at this as an opportunity to kind of get people in the door, familiar with our product, buying it over the internet. And, we were able to actually just set up a whole bunch of recurring, like we have a subscription service now as well. So, that's really nice, and that's still going. But I think we kind of looked at it as an opportunity to kind of just test it out and learn really quickly and iterate rapidly. And I think it was really successful for us in doing that. Now we'll step back, and I think, over the coming months, 6-month period, we really will kind of flesh out our content strategy, I think, a little bit more.
Great. So what I heard you say is there definitely was the spike, gave you a place to learn and experiment. But Rich, can you tell us a little bit about what you observed with some of your clients, and do you have any examples of maybe how they reacted or what advice you gave?
Sure, and obviously things continue to change, and that's going to make people behave differently. When it first became obvious that we were going to be working from home, and for quite some time, we had just helped a plumbing client down in Pennsylvania launch a brand new company, and then COVID hits, and suddenly nobody wants anybody to be allowed into their house. Nobody's making these calls, all this sort of stuff. But plumbing was still considered to be an essential business, and obviously people still have plumbing issues. What we had suggested to them is that they actually set up virtual plumbing sessions. And that's what they did. And so basically people could call them, and it was promoted on their website, and we did a little PR for them. And they started to get some calls from people who would basically walk around with their iPhone and through FaceTime or through Facebook chat or whatever it would be, basically show the plumbers on duty what was going on. And in many cases, the plumbers were able to tell them what they could do themselves and fix the problem. And in other cases, the problem was too big. And then they decided, listen, we do need to come in, or you need to call somebody because this is going to have a lasting damage. So that was a really good example of leveraging this opportunity because, you know, what's that saying? Never waste a good crisis. So this is an opportunity where it's like they were going to be in a lot of trouble. Like no one's going to make a decision on a brand new company they've never heard of. They're not in the phone book, if anybody even used that, you know, and they're just getting started. So they're not going to get found in Google, but they come up with this clever approach and they tailor it to their own needs, and suddenly they're getting a lot of visibility around it. So, I mean, that's one good example of a company kind of leveraging the opportunities that a pandemic can actually give you as a way of standing out.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. It just kind of makes me think, so, you know, what if you're there with your iPhone and somebody's telling you, oh, you know, hit that level or turn that wrench a little bit more. And so it's kind of the next step of the YouTube do-it-yourself video is
Exactly.
YouTube. Yeah, that's great.
And along those same lines, you know, we were talking to a real estate agency, and one of the things, obviously people still need to buy houses, but in this company does a lot of second homes, vacation homes. People were not flying up here to take a look at them. But what they would do is they had started doing two things, spec tours. So if I get a new listing, I go and I basically record the entire thing as a video, which then can go up to a private area on the website. But you get to that listing, you're like, this looks cool. It's like, oh, look, to view the house, to take a virtual tour with the salesperson, all I need to do is fill out the short form. Okay, now they've collected this person's information, so even if that home's not right for them, they can follow up. So that was a great way of doing it. But they're also offering on-demand tours as well. So I can arrange to have somebody show me the house virtually. So I can be like, oh wait, can you go back to that closet? I want to see, like, how does it open? How much, you know, so you can really get that creative, interactive feel, not just seeing the spec recording of that house tour. So I think, you know, being flexible and leveraging the tools that are evolving and people's comfort level with them, that's really critical, not just now, but also looking forward into the future.
That's great. And again, I want to reiterate the statistic that I found. 42% of retail purchasers shifted their behavior to online, and 23% said they're there to stay. So, Rich, knowing that, if a client were to come to you and say, you know, what advice can you give me really to my e-content strategy? Has your advice changed at all? Is there anything, is it, you know, stick to the meat and potatoes, or has things evolved?
Well, I think you constantly have to stay on top of what the mood is and what the conversation is. And, you know, just like Cameron said, they saw the spike and then things slowed down. And that could be kind of a reflection of what I saw, where when this first hit, everybody pulled back their advertising. Everybody's like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford anything. And then there's the PPP, and then the economy. I wouldn't say it's robust by any stretch, but parts of the economy start figuring out how can we work through the pandemic. And so then we started seeing a lot of our clients come to us, and even new clients saying, we want to be advertising. We want to be advertising online. So part of it may have been that the bids went up. I don't know if that was the case, Cameron, but so all of a sudden you're seeing a lot of different ads, and obviously there's other stuff going on as well. But there are some basics that everybody should be doing. And there's no one size fits all. B2B is going to be different than B2C. Somebody whose clients are all local, they're going to have to market and advertise themselves online differently than somebody who's got more of a global or at least a national presence. But, having a strong website that answers all the questions that your customers have, making sure that you're easy to find, whether that means search engine optimization, local search, paid search, targeted ads on social media sites like Facebook. Those are the building blocks that don't really shift, but some of your communication needs to shift. One of our clients, two of our clients are yacht builders. It's hard to talk about buying yachts, especially back in March and April when people were like, I don't know if I'll ever have a job again. And so some of that is around the messaging. What do you want to say to people who may have just lost their job and you're showing them a picture of a $500,000 yacht? So it's about, for them, it was more about looking forward to seeing you out on the water. And that was kind of an aspirational, optimistic look at things like that. So get your building blocks in place, but then also be paying close attention to the tone of your audience, what they're looking for from you, and then be ready to shift a lot of your messaging based on that.
Great. Cameron, so you started you said at one point, we're still developing our e-content strategy, right? Because you kind of launched this thing overnight within, a very short period of time. Looking back, what advice could you give to somebody that said, hey, I'm going to join the fleet of, e-commerce and I'm going to launch my stuff, and maybe another food type of business?
Yeah, another food business. So, I think there's kind of like the ideal scenario, right? Or just the general advice of like what is relevant for content strategy, like what would the textbook advice be that I would give to CommonWealth Poultry outside of a pandemic situation, and then maybe like what kinds of modifications would you make to that during a pandemic, I guess. And yeah. I think sort of starting generally, like for us, and I think, to Rich's sort of last point there, that the tone really depends on your audience. Like for us, it was really interesting because the business had been wholesale before we started this. Like we did not have a retail business. And so we didn't really have a direct line to consumers, and we didn't really know kind of how they would respond to our messaging. And so in that sense, our kind of brand messaging was really in this nascent state. And so, when I look at our strategy, I think it still actually is in this very nascent state. And I think that there are a bunch of reasons for that. One, because, Ryan and I are so particular about what we want this to be and how we want to use the brand as a voice to, I think one of the most important things you can do is, and this is going to be my kind of mantra, is like pick a hill to die on when it comes to content strategy. We fit in this place, both of us, where we've always been apolitical, and we never really, we're confused when the culture kind of tries to put us in a box. And so it's like, are you left, right, black, white, like all of these different labels. And that kind of, like pro lockdown, anti-lock, right? Like all of these different things. The fact that everything can kind of be politicized these days, like it's really, I think, it kind of inspires a revulsion in both of us at a deep level. And so I think we both envision the brand kind of being, using the voice of the brand as a way to not combat that, but kind of transcend it. And so that's a really lofty goal, right? Like you have to be super careful. And I think like if you look on our website, you'll see kind of all these different values that we are speaking to in a what feels like almost a coherent way, but we're not quite there yet. And so I think,
I kind of see what you mean. I follow you guys on LinkedIn and Facebook, or maybe it's just Facebook. But I kind of see what you mean. But yeah, continue on.
Yeah. So I think
everybody else.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, over the 6-month period, like, especially because summer's our busy time, I think what we'll end up doing is like, for now it's full speed ahead production. We're like, processing a bunch of birds for other people. This is the busiest time of the year, really through kind of like, Thanksgiving. I think once we hit that point, then it's going to be winter and we're going to be quiet. And like, we're going to go do our kind of, you know, writing and our focus and that stuff. And so this is not necessarily the right strategy for everybody. This is kind of the general case of like, quote, if you have time. In a pandemic, obviously you're like, you're trying to, you know, capture this sort of upswing in the market, and you need to get stuff out there as soon as you can. And so, you know, the strategy changes, I think, quite a bit. But, you know, I think we're both so like, I mean, I'm somebody who I think will micromanage the brand like to the last, to like the last inch, right? Because I think it's so important. And you know, I hear Rich speaking to this. I mean, this is so much of the equity in a business nowadays, any retail business, is in the brand assets, is in the digital appearance. And so, you know, I think like to the extent that somebody who's just starting out in a food business, et cetera, like whatever place you're in, like pick a hill to die on that's not something that's been rehashed, right? Like over and over again, like saying that you're the most organic or like the most pasture raised or, you know, all these things, right? Like all that stuff I have a background in, I think it's great, but like it just doesn't differentiate you enough. And you therefore can't speak to it with enough passion, I think, which is, I think, that the cornerstone of ours. I mean, we really care about, we kind of don't fit in this box. We really care about immigration issues, and we really care about some kind of, you know, updated version of the American dream. And that's like, that doesn't really fit in any political box. And so, you know, for us, it's like articulating that really clearly and carefully. That's
Great.
The hill to die on.
So the hill to die on. Okay, I understand that. Rich, we talked the other day a little bit about how, you know, the big players who have jumped into retail, you know, Walmart, Target, you know, those type of things, those type of companies. How can small, what advice would you give to, you know, Cameron here for his business as a small retailer in the food space, and just seeing that, you know, Walmart and Target and all these, you know, Whole Foods, all these food businesses have moved very quickly to answer that call of you know, 33% of retail sales now being e-commerce.
Well, I think Cameron's got it well in hand, so I don't know that he needs my advice. But with that being said, for any other business out there that would be similar to that, you know, the fact is you've got these giant competitors, like Amazon is a great one, great being a great example of one, where they sell just about every single thing, and they are taking business away from small proprietors, which is, I guess, capitalism. But at the same time, it's kind of like it's taking that business away from them because they're able to provide it. And because they have this, the Amazon Prime, this kind of subscription model, the average consumer wants to get as much out of it as possible. So they think about, well, I'm just going to start ordering more and more from Amazon, so I really make that $99 or $129, whatever it is, back. So I think that a lot of small proprietors need to think about, what can I do to replicate what the big businesses, what the big companies are doing? So creating some sort of subscription model, if they don't already have one, would be a great step in that direction. So if I had a chicken business, or if I was selling hamburgers or whatever, or kale, I would think about Kale of the Month group, you know, and just every month for a discounted rate, you automatically get that so that you know that this money is coming in. And the other piece is, at some point you're going to say, well, do I really need a Kale of the Month or Kale subscription? Because I can also get that from Whole Foods as part of the bigger delivery, or Amazon, which I guess are the same company now, or Target, or what have you. And so I think part of the job of small and family-owned and local businesses is what Cameron was saying earlier, is that branding piece. And you have to build that loyalty from your product and from your message, because people are interested, not everybody, but there's a percentage of people out there who are interested in supporting local businesses or family-owned businesses, or small businesses, because they like what that brings to the table. So showing that you're a local owner, that you're a family-owned business, and making that part of your marketing message, I think can be really important. If you are political, and political can mean a lot of different things, but if you stand for something, making that part of your messaging, whether you are for law and order or Black Lives Matter or anything else. Like some people would say, oh, stay away from that because you don't want to start getting into that. But the bottom line is, there's enough people in every single division that will rally around your cause. And you can't do business with everyone. So maybe if you do have something that you do believe in, that you are passionate about, that can be some of your brand, part of your brand, which is what we're seeing a lot these days. And that can help kind of hedge your bets and protect you against some of these giant corporations that can throw a lot more money at Google ads or operations than you possibly can. So adopting some of their strategies, but staying true to what makes you local, family-owned, or small, can really help get your piece of the pie.
That's great, Rich. Cameron, based on what Rich said, is there anything that sort of rings true to you there, and what do you think is most important for Commonwealth Poultry to not be, to combat, Whole Foods and Target selling chicken online as well?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really good stuff in there, Rich. Specifically focusing on this sort of the small local component, I think that there's a transparency component there that comes to mind for me about what we're doing here that really is something that couldn't be provided by a Whole Foods or or an Amazon level company, right? Is that we can actually we can walk people through our facility and say, this is the whole facility, right? Here are the faces of the people that work here. Everybody. This is it. This is the company, right? This is a group of people coming together, working towards a common goal, et cetera. We can show a sense of scale, right? This is not a tiny facility, but it's nowhere near, it's very small, right? It's tiny compared to the scale of some of those other companies. And I think just showing people what they're getting, right? This is it. This is the people. This is, I think that's something that those companies can't really do, despite their, incredible ad spend of putting, banners up of employees, et cetera. It just doesn't feel genuine in the same way that when we highlight somebody, we can actually talk about, what they've done at work that day, and we can know it, in a way that they can.
And when you have that locally owned business, the people you're highlighting might be the neighbor of the person who's seeing you on Facebook. And that's going to have a higher, that's going to have better reaction than just showing one person who happens to work for that company, but it's irrelevant to the person who's seeing that ad. So the more you can show your connection to the community, I think that also will resonate with a large portion of the population, consumers out there.
Right. And Rich, you had talked about monthly reoccurring revenue. Can you elaborate on what that looks like? And then Cameron, to follow up after Rich, have you guys had any experience with, reoccurring revenue? Yeah.
So I have been moving Flyte New Media towards more recurring revenue every month for the past several years. When I first started, for the longest time, feast and famine. I mean, that's what happens in the creative industries. It's basically you're overwhelmed with work or nothing happens for months. So the idea of working with somebody month in and month out, knowing that I've got to dedicate this many hours of my team to this project, that we're going to get this much money back, that the customer or the client knows that they have this much that they're spending every month so they can just not worry about it, that works for everybody. It's especially good for us because we just know this amount of work's coming in. We don't have to worry about it. So we started looking at all the things that are project-based and determined. We can't do it 100%, but what is project-based that we may be able to shift to this recurring monthly revenue model? And it's something that I've seen success in part in our business, and also some other friends of mine who run agencies have done an even better job, started earlier, moved over to this recurring monthly revenue. I've actually just started a book called The Automatic Customer, which is actually all about this. But there's a lot of benefits to that model, and it builds a lot of customer loyalty, and they feel like they're part of the process. So I would recommend for anybody who's listening to this webinar right now is take a look at the work that you're doing, and is there a way to make this an automatic sale every week, every month, whatever the case may be. One of the examples that came out of the book so far was florists often have to throw away 20 to 40% of their inventory because it goes bad on a regular basis. Plus every sale is is it a one-off? Am I going to see this person again? Do I have to wait till he forgets his anniversary again before he buys flowers for his wife? Whatever the case is. This one company, I think it was called Bloom Inc., was a florist, and they only focused on recurring revenue by going to hospitals, nursing homes, office buildings, and basically you get a subscription. and they deliver the same type of flowers or something like that every week, 2 weeks, or 4 weeks. And they had like 2% toss rate on their products. And they could go to the cheapest space in town. They didn't have to have a place on Fifth Avenue to be able to do this. And so it was a very effective model for them.
Great. That's a great example, Rich. Thank you.
Yeah, I've heard the florist recurring model discussed a lot, and I think there's probably still a lot of untapped potential there.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of our sort of relationship with subscription, I think we probably got it up maybe early May, mid-May.
And what is your subscription product?
Got it. So originally we set it up so that there was just kind of, we have these packs, like these boxes on our website, which consist of, different cuts of chicken and duck. And originally when we offered the subscription, we only offered, I think we had 2 different boxes or 3 different boxes at that time. So they were sort of mixed packs, and you could just choose to get that every, 1, 2, 4, 6, whatever, 8 weeks. And then as we went along, actually, we had people asking like, can I substitute, swap this in and out? And actually that kind of mirrors how a lot of the other direct-to-consumer meat businesses do it, where you can either like have a pre-built box or customize your own box. So at that point, we basically took every single product on our site and allowed people to put it into a recurring box. And so they'll save, some percent off of the list price if they get these items on a recurring delivery schedule. And yeah, I mean, so, technically Shopify didn't have support for that right out of the gate. So there was a little bit of kind of setup, but again, like, one of the apps that was out there made it really pretty easy to kick that off. So yeah, we have, I think probably like, 75 customers that have a standing order of one variety or another, one frequency or another, but it's been really nice. I mean, it's been really encouraging to sort of hear, the overwhelming positive feedback that we've had from our product. I mean, we've had our fair share of issues, shipping issues. I think largely a lot of that stuff is on the carrier, hitting boxes, packages opening or whatever, but overwhelmingly it's been really, really positive. People really love this product. Like we had somebody say, you're the people who are saving chicken for the American cook, right? Like so generous with the feedback. And so, yeah, it's been really nice to have, this, what is it? I think a relatively modest number of people who are kind of, engaging in this way, but it's a proof of concept. And I think that for sure, when I think about what to prioritize going forward, it's, I mean, we can justify spending a little bit more per customer because the average order value, the average order size is pretty high. And these people are just, like some percentage of them end up in the system and as recurring revenue. And so, yeah, that's for sure what we'll prioritize, going forward with the retail portion of the business.
That's great. Well, thank you. So, set it and forget it. That's what I call recurring revenue. We have a question that was submitted ahead of time. But what is the biggest mistake people make in launching any content strategy? Kind of to the both of you. Cameron, based on your experience, but Rich, what is the most common mistake that you see?
Most common mistake might be in not having a strategy and just saying, I'm going to throw up an e-commerce store and expect that people are going to buy from it. This is definitely not one of those, if you build it, they will come situations. So there are a lot, if you've never done any e-commerce, there are a number of different options. Cameron mentioned a very popular one, Shopify. That's like the WordPress of e-commerce sites out there right now. Very easy to use. You can scale up, but the bottom line is very easy to get started in. But if you're, depending on what you're doing, if you just want to set up an order form, a secure order form on your website, that may be enough too, so you don't have to spend a lot of money. Shopify is nice because you're just paying that monthly recurring bill, like we kind of talked about. But there are expensive e-commerce solutions that are very robust. You need to decide if that's really what you need at this point. And then not to spend your entire budget on the platform itself, knowing that you are going to have to shift people's opinions of buying chicken through your website. If you've only been selling to, to restaurants in the past, to sell to consumers, it's a different thing. So to take some money and to learn Facebook ads, or to work with an agency that does Facebook ads, or paid search, or figure out an SEO strategy that is going to take time. Investing in the driving traffic to your e-commerce site is as important as having a functional e-commerce site.
oftentimes what I see to add on to that is a lot of clients, they set everything up, but they don't put enough ammunition in behind the process to actually get the ball rolled to the top of the hill. So they start, they experiment a little bit, but they don't really commit to any particular strategy to see if it actually works. But Cameron, what's your reflection on that?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I mean, sort of right in line with what Rich is saying, that like, even though we kind of know what our brand is, and we know in some like more kind of, in some like less articulated way, kind of what it is that we want to represent. I think it was pretty difficult to kind of, in dealing with all of the logistics and, dealing with shipping and actually, like, at the time I was still in California when we launched this. And so figuring out, like, me trying to operate this business remotely, kind of like figuring out what's happening in the packing facility, like I didn't really have a lot of transparency. So like I was trying to troubleshoot. There was a lot of that. And so, spending a lot of time doing that and consequently being able to spend less time kind of like really crafting thoughtful messaging, I think is something that would have been nice to do differently. The other thing, and I think, sort of reflecting back on that first question about like, well, what would you give in terms of advice in e-content strategy? Let's say video. Like if we couldn't really get video going, but I think for us and for what we wanted to show, and for how important it is to show like really high resolution, sort of compelling, aspirational imagery around food, like I would have loved to have been able to get some kind of video, or again, towards sort of like the brand assets and just showing that transparency, a walkthrough of the facility or that kind of stuff. And, because I was the main person coordinating this, but wasn't on site, like, we just couldn't.
Yeah. So are you at CommonWealth Poultry now?
I am, yes.
Yes. All right, great.
I'm here. This is my third day on the job here.
That's where you shipped your mattress, right? Did you bring it home yet?
That's right. No, that's right. Ryan was very helpful, and he brought 2 mattresses, actually. We got 2 new mattresses.
Yeah. So to make sure I can tell Ryan, yes, Cameron talked about CommonWealth Poultry in the best way. What is your differentiator? What makes you guys special?
Well, I think really when we think about this business, it's about the people, right? I mean, we don't use chemicals, all of that. We're air chilled, but this business is really about the people. This is a set of people who, most of our workers are Somali. They come here. They're, they come from a war-torn country. They're refugees, and we work with these people, and we really want to build a space for them to, work towards something that is what we understand to be the American dream. And so, these people show up, they work so hard every day, some of them, like 10, 12 hours, a lot of them. And, this business is about a reflection of what we think America is. I mean, it's a place where you come, experience what economic freedom is like, and you work your butt off to, make your life better. And so, as much as I want to talk about air chilled and, how we don't use chemicals and, the birds are really, gorgeous, and they, the flavor is concentrated, and they're really a premium product. This business really is about the people at the end of the day.
All right, we'll just extract this part of the video, and I'll hand that over to you for your video. Okay.
Sounds great.
All right. What I want to do now, we've 50 minutes in, but I wanted to open up to our attendees to see if there's any additional questions, which we'd love to answer. And you can utilize the chat functionality, or you can raise your hand, and I should see it in. You should see it. Oh, there we go. All right, Lisa, I'm gonna. Lisa, can you hear us? All right. Lisa, I can't hear you, but if you mind posting your question in the chat, I'd be happy to share. While we wait for any questions, Rich, do you have anything else to share? What's really important? The big question that I have is, was it a spike or a plateau? Any Anything else to add for
I
us?
think it really just depends on your industry at this point. I mean, there's going to be people who definitely, you know, it was a spike for some and it was a drop off for others. So I think it's just one thing that you need to be aware of. I think most companies can come out of this. It is like we've talked about, and I know the word is overused, but it is about pivoting right now to get through this process. But I think it's really important to learn from what's going on. It sounds like CommonWealth has done a really good job about this, about paying attention to what's working, seeing when things shift, not continuing to throw good money after bad. If you realize that all of a sudden the ROI on Facebook ads isn't working for you anymore, try and figure out what why that is. Is it just that the ads need to be refreshed, or is it the fact that people are tuning away from Facebook right now because of the over politicized nature of it, you know? Or is it that your audience is not spending a lot of time on Facebook for that reason? So I think it's really critically important to do that. And the other thing is, especially in B2B, probably one of the best things that we did is just reach out to our clients when things went south. And we knew, because we're not in one industry, that some of our clients were doing better than others. But we reached out to everybody. We gave everybody who wanted it free consulting at the beginning, which actually led to a surge in business for us, but also generated a lot of goodwill. And if I'm being honest, it was slightly selfish. Even if I wasn't looking to get the business, I want all my clients to stay in business because I want to continue working with them. And it's time again for us to do the outreach. Even though a lot of businesses seem to be out of the danger area, staying in touch with your clients and continually asking them what they want, what they need from a company like yours right now is probably some of the best marketing you can do right now. It's just asking questions and listening. And that's never going to go out of style. But right now, things are changing day to day. People's opinions are changing day to day. It's really important to be listening to what your audience needs from you.
So that's a great point you make, because Lisa is asking us, how often are you communicating with customers? Are you doing more surveys to help dictate your next moves?
So that is, I didn't even see that question pop up until right now. Yeah, so surveys can be helpful. And I think surveys are good when you have a large customer base because you're trying to get some ideas. I'd recommend a mixture of multiple choice as well as short answers, because you want to see if people start using the same phrases over and over again, which gives you a sense of where they are emotionally and what they need from you, and the kind of language you should be putting into your own messaging. Where Flyte has, we may work with a couple hundred businesses over the course of the year. We're generally working with maybe 20 to 30, 40 clients at a time with ongoing projects. And so it's easy enough for me or a member of my team, or to spread it around, for us to be checking in on them on a monthly basis. And for a lot of our clients, we're checking in with them on a monthly basis anyways, because we're running reports for them, we're making recommendations for them, we're creating content on their behalf. So we're having at least monthly meetings, often even weekly, or and if you're in the midst of a project, even more frequently than that. And so we can just ask them, like, what's going on right now? What are you struggling with today?
Great point. Okay.
Yeah,
Cameron,
for us, we have, you know, kind of a series of automated emails that are pushed out each time someone orders, right? And so we can engage with people there and kind of ask questions, you know, please let us know how we can better meet your needs, et cetera. You know, the other thing that was kind of really important to me, and I think that this is an artifact of having worked in software, is to put a little chat bubble on the website so that people can message in and kind of ask questions about the product, right? And really kind of engage in, and like, I'll answer that thing pretty much any time of the night, you know, for the most part, or you know, it's mostly me at this point. And so that was, I think, a really important way early on for us to understand, you know, like, what is, just specifically even with the website, like, are people understanding the flow? Are they able to get what they need, right? Are there any roadblocks? And so I think that you know, that kind of solution, the live chat, for me is really helpful. I don't think it actually really helps you with the big picture strategy of like what it is, how you can serve people better, but it does give you that sort of really granular, like, this is broken, that's broken, which, you know, when you're building out a website is very, very important.
so it gives the customer or consumer an opportunity to ping you right away and elevate issues, right?
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, I would love to do, I think, a little bit more, you know, sort of direct outreach to our, like, let's say, you know, frequent customers and say, you know, what can we do better and how can we serve you better? I think that that's a great idea.
Yeah, Great. We have another question from Carrie. I'd like to hear more about whether local production will continue to be a compelling argument to consumers post-pandemic. I see in the food industry in particular an opportunity to create a more resilient supply network by relying on more smaller producers. What would be the strategy to leverage that? You guys reflect on that.
It seems like, you know, for us, I think this is essential to what we do, right? I mean, this is in a way like half of our content strategy. And I think a lot of it is, you know, I mean, a lot of it is consumer education and, you know, through branding assets. I think that there's kind of a general sentiment in the populace that, you know, local and small production is good, right? Better than big and industrial. But I think that this is a crystallizing event that really allows people to see that clearly. And so, you know, like, I think it's a more difficult and nuanced question about like to what extent you kind of reference this crystallizing event as we go into the future and how much you want to anchor on that. But I think it's definitely important to speak to it generally. And I think that will be a massive part of what we do. I'm sure Rich has, you know, more kind of insight across different industries. Yeah.
So Rich, do you think the local production will continue to be a compelling argument to consumers post-pandemic?
I think to certain consumers it will. Obviously, people who are shopping at Walmart are probably not going to be Cameron's best customers, right? So that's just, you can't be all things to all people. So what you want to do is identify the people that do care about where they're, in this particular example, do care where their food comes from, do care about that chain that's going on, and speak to them. And I think this is also why now is a great opportunity to be having those conversations, to educate people. The pandemic is an excuse to shop locally and to use a company that takes extra care of their food. But if we can get them to get used to the habit of ordering or signing up for a subscription to use us, then we have more opportunity to stay in front of them post-pandemic, to start developing the behaviors in consumers that we as owners want to see. And I think everybody on this call is pretty passionate about their business. So it's not just about money, it's about what we stand for. So to start getting people to behave in a way that makes sense for both them and us, that's our job right now. So making it easy for them to order, to get rid of the friction on your website, as you were talking about, Cameron, to make this, people want to do business locally. They want to do business with small businesses, but we do still need to make it easy for them. And Andrew, I know I gave you this very strange example the other day, but the other day we talked about getting some worms for our garden. And so I went online and I said, you know, where can I buy worms? And of course there's mail order worms. Of course there is, because, you know, the internet. But there were also like 3 or 4 local shops that Google said they mentioned worms on their website. Well, I went to these websites and there was no way of me knowing if they sold worms, if they were just talking about worms, if they like worms. So I couldn't, nor were their hours listed. It didn't have, you know, it was just like, I'm like, I would not buy from those companies because
they're even a store there anymore. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like, so I think that, you know, people want, a portion of the population wants to support small, local, family-owned businesses. But at the same time, we need to make it easy for them to buy from us now and in the future. And as many ways as you can get rid of friction, the more likely you are to capture that business. And that recurring monthly revenue model does remove a lot of the friction on both ends.
Right. Hey, Rich, thank you. That was a great closing finish. Cameron, Cameron DeLeone with CommonWealth Poultry, thank you so much for joining us. And Rich Brooks with Flyte New Media, thank you as well. I appreciate it. And
thanks for the opportunity.
We'll post this, absolutely, and very enjoyable. And I look forward to collaborating with you both in the future. Feel free to reach out to me directly at opusconsultinggroup.com. My email is andrew@opuscg.com. Happy to make the connection with Rich Brooks or introduce you to some delicious chicken. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Andrew.
All right. Take care, everyone. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.